Okay, we're going on with this book, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. Some authors I skipped just because they weren't even in the book. I just personally collect their quotes because they don't work so well for this, okay? Like I had Mel Gibson, but he's a great actor. He did a lot of great things. He's made a lot of great videos, but I don't really have that many good quotes from him. Just one great one was, I don't make things complicated to get their way all by themselves. The guy we're going to do today is William Glasser. William Glasser was a psychiatrist and an educator, a teacher, and he wrote a good book about the quality school. His heart was in the right place. He tried to help kids. I like him, okay? So I'm going to tell you some of the things he said about school. His idea of the so-called choice theory was his method of psychology and psychiatry, and he used something similar in his idea of a quality school. He recommended that an adult should not try so much to control their friends as like a parent shouldn't try, like you don't try to control your friends, you shouldn't try to control your children so much, was his opinion. You should try more to have a good relationship with them so that when they have a problem, they'll come to you and talk to you. Because if they trust you, he thinks they'll talk to you more as a parent. It's not that easy being a parent. I think it's important that both of the parents agree on how to handle the kids. Because what I've seen happen a lot as a man, I'm working all the time. I'm not around. The kids are naturally going to talk to mama or grandma first. But it's good that the wife talks with the husband, because what I've seen is a lot of women, they're really not very good parents. Women are good with children when they're little and when they're young. But women have, in my experience, and maybe it's because my wife is so beautiful, they have this sense of entitlement. Okay, and you're not going to get very far in the world going around with a sense of entitlement, especially for boys. Okay, for boys, nobody's going to go out of their way to be nice to you or spoil you. Nobody wants to sleep with you, okay? You just need to work and do your job, and you need to kind of understand things. Raising a boy is very different than raising a girl. And I think a lot of mothers, they ruin their sons by spoiling them. They create all kinds of bad habits in them, impulsive, childish behavior, and a woman can get away with it. A man cannot get away with that. Like a woman has a much wider dynamic range. She can cry and stomp her feet and have a temper tantrum like a child, and people are like, oh, that's okay. She can get angry and throw things, that's okay. But a man can't. A man has to stay in a limited thing. If he cries, he's a wuss. If he gets loud and aggressive or throws things, then he's bad or he's violent or something. So he has to stay in a narrow range. And what I'm trying to say is, when boys are raised by women, they're more impulsive and whiny and loud and entitled and annoying, and a lot of times grown men, coaches, teachers don't like them, don't want them around, so they're less likely to get good teaching, good coaching, because they don't know how to behave. They're annoying. All right, so anyways, getting back to Glasser, he says, the best way you can communicate that you love your children is by always being open to talking or listening. Okay, now here's some of the good stuff. He says, every single major push in education has made it worse. And right now it's really bad because everything we've done is dehumanizing education. And I would just make the quote, this idea of trying to have kids learn from online mastering learning programs. You learn best when you're with somebody who you like and admire and respect as like your coach or your teacher. Dehumanizing it completely is bad. Okay, anyways, Glasser continues. It's destroying the possibility of the teacher and the student having a warm, friendly, intellectual relationship. The skills of speaking and listening have the largest payoff of all we learn. The best question to ask to determine what is need satisfying is, can you use this in your life now or in the near future, the foreseeable future? Yeah, and people should be learning stuff that's valuable. What they learn in the school is a complete waste of time, and that's why I say they should learn, how do you purify food? How do you purify water? How do you grow food? They should do that in the classroom. Grow food and purify water. Those are valuable skills. And these are things you can talk about and you can remember, and that will continue into your adulthood. A random vocabulary list, you're never going to think about it again. It's a waste of time. Glasser continues. When students say we have a great teacher, what they are saying is that the teacher has taught them to use and improve knowledge, has required the students to think. Learning to write takes time. When I think about a great teacher, who was a great teacher? I liked my English teacher because, I liked literature. I thought it was interesting. And she liked that I liked it. And I would talk to her about it. So she was nice to me. I still remember her, and her name was Mrs. Schultz. She said, Peter, I think you have a lot of potential. You'll do good in college. And you just keep up the work and you keep reading a lot. That was nice because teachers never talked to me. I was an athlete. I didn't really have much to do with teachers. And I liked one of my old English teachers, Mr. Ralph, because he was funny. He was kind of looked like Ichabod Crane. And then when he would read the Ichabod Crane story, he would act it all out. He was fun. I liked my English literature class. He would read Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, Jonathan Edwards, and he would act it out. I liked that. I liked his personality. I liked one of my psychology teachers in high school. He used to call me Rippin' Rogers because I was a really great wrestler, but he was nice. I like the guy who would talk to me. Somebody who talked to me like a person instead of just, reading out of the book, boring the crap out of all the students. Okay, let's see, what else? The great teacher requires the students to think. He says, learning to write takes time. Every year, all year long, the teacher should work with students to improve their writing. Okay, well, that's good advice, learning how to write. Give them something that they want to write about. Don't force them to write about stuff they don't care about. Here's a great quote. This is one of my favorite quotes for William Glasser. He says, our brains are not set up to memorize information that we do not use. So that's why public schools, they stink. They have centralized planning, and the people who are the central planners hate the kids' guts. A lot of times they're communist, okay? They want to destroy these kids, make them into atheists, make them disrespect their parents, turn them into losers, hedonistic, only hang around with kids their own age, so they just waste all their time. The public schools are not the friend of your children. They want to destroy your children. Try to get out of them if you can. Okay, William Glasser continues. That students should enjoy academic work is not a concern of traditional schools. It's perfectly acceptable to them to try and coerce students into totally worthless, meaningless work, such as memorizing material that both they and the teacher know they will forget a few days after the test. This is the school equivalent of digging holes and then filling them in, a traditional punishment. Yeah, it's like Cool Hand Luke when the warden says, okay, now dig a ditch. Okay, then he digs a hole and he says, okay, now you've got dirt on my land. Put that dirt back in your hole. Then the other warden comes up and he says, hey, now you've got dirt in my hole. Take that dirt out. So Cool Hand Luke's all day long making a ditch and taking the soil. And that's what the schools do in a sense when they waste your time with nonsense. You want to learn stuff that is relevant to you. Like I've told you about that teacher, the book whisperer. Donalyn Miller was her name, I think. When she just let the kids read whatever they want, they read 43 books on average in a year, versus if you force them to read a book, they'll only read about 2 or 3 and they'll hate it and they won't remember it. Okay, let's see what he says. Some kids just need a small amount of tutoring and they're able to work by themselves as long as the work makes sense to them. Education is worth the effort. Schooling is not. So education is learning something you want to learn about. School and something where you have personal interest. Schooling is when they force you to do something, and that's almost always a waste of time. Like he says, education is worth improving. Schooling cannot be improved. The real excitement attached to learning something is to improve on it. Students should only be asked to do useful work. So he sounds a lot like John Taylor Gatto there. Oh, here's a good one. He says, the people who wrote the DSM are crazier than the patients it describes. DSM is supposed to be about crazy people. Actually, it was written by crazy people. Yeah, psychiatry is evil. Modern psychiatry is just drugging people with drugs that cause brain damage. I used to have an orthopedic surgery friend, and he said to me, psychiatry is the only field in medicine where the doctor is usually sicker than the patient. And that's a bit of a stretch. I do actually know some pretty nice psychiatrists who I like. But I do think psychiatry as a field is totally stupid. They see that as the dividing line between them and a psychologist is that they can prescribe drugs, so they prescribe drugs like crazy, but they forget to say the drugs don't work. They cause brain damage. As Bregan had said, they all cause a chemical lobotomy, either slow or fast. Antipsychotics cause it fast. Tricyclic and selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors cause it more slowly, but they still cause brain damage. Okay, Glasser continues. The best way to teach a skill-based curriculum is to relate it to what you are trying to teach in the real world. The information, okay, yeah, like look, we remember driver's ed because it's useful. Okay, we learn in high school how to talk to girls to some extent, but we don't really understand them. That's useful. What else did I learn that was useful? I liked my English teacher, like I said, but I really didn't learn much of value in high school. And the way they teach science, it's stupid. I've had medical students tell me they learned more from talking to me for a few hours than they learned through their entire science curriculum in high school, in college, and in medical school. They say, everything we learned before was just sort of random memorizing disconnected things. We talk to you and it all makes sense. Right, and then remember that. I am banned from teaching at the local medical school. Okay, banned. I'm the smartest doctor around. There's no doctor at that medical center that's even capable of having an intelligent conversation with me about real health of the common diseases, pathophysiology. And why? Because I made a joke in my own book. Okay, what I'm trying to say is I was deliberately censored because they don't want me teaching the students. They don't want me telling the students the truth about these drugs don't work, for example, in some of these different fields. All right? But what I'm trying to tell you is, do you think they have the student's best interest at heart? No. Do you think they have the patient's best interest at heart? No. You have to learn to recognize what people are actually doing, not what they say. They're always going to say nice things, okay? They're going to tell you fluoride is good for your teeth. They're going to tell you aluminum clarifies your water. They're not going to tell you these are brain poisons. We're lowering your IQ, make you a docile sheep, a chump, okay? You have to ask yourself, what are they actually doing? Okay, he continues, Glasser. The information we are asked to memorize must be useful now and the foreseeable future, or we won't make the effort to learn it no matter how much we are coerced to do so. Yeah, your brain's designed to remember things that are useful. If it's not useful, your brain forgets it. We don't remember what we had for dinner, 10 weeks ago unless we eat the same thing every day. Okay, I suggest every year the school should buy a rundown house or a small decrepit apartment building and then make it a project for the students to renovate it. That's a great idea. We learn 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 70% of what we discuss, 80% of what we experience personally, and 95% of what we teach somebody else. Yeah, it's very valuable to teach somebody else. Okay, I got another set of quotes here by William Glasser. This is at the heart of all good education, where the teacher asks students to think and engages them in encouraging dialogues, constantly checking for their understanding and growth. Yeah, you can have a dialogue with a student, but in reality, most students don't know hardly anything. When I talk to medical students, it's not much of a dialogue. I ask them questions, they never know the answer, and then I teach them the answer. And I try to show them a picture, because they're more likely to remember a picture. And if I got a video, I'll show them a video. And that would be more likely to stick with them. And students love jokes. That's one of the reasons why I think it's ridiculous. Good teaching has jokes because jokes are memorable, okay? Think about when your father taught you something, okay? Like my father, when I would do something stupid, he would call me a shithawk, in the sense that there were good things around me, but I would get myself into the bullshit, whatever it might be in the situation. That was good. Okay, William Glasser. We can pay teachers $100,000 a year and we'll do nothing to improve our schools as long as we keep going on the ABCDF grading system. Okay, and standardized testing, he could have added to that. Don't do anything with anyone if it seems to increase the distance between you two. Okay? Ask yourself, if I do or say this, will we be closer or farther apart? Do what you can to keep close. The relationship should take precedence over always being right. The best way you can communicate that you love your children is to always be open to talking and questioning, listening and talking. Okay, forcing people to learn has never been successful, and yet we continue to do it because we think it's right. Or maybe it's because they know it doesn't work and they want to waste the kids' time, the central planners. Okay, to study with, this is somebody else's quote, to study with desire is real activity, but to study without desire is a semblance and a mockery of activity. Yep. Okay, William Glasser. Education is not acquiring knowledge. Education should be defined as using the knowledge. Okay, well, there's some truth in that. All right. Almost done with this guy here. The basics of education, useful learning, are learning to speak, read, listen, read and write. Okay, yeah, to get good at that. I think it's a great thing, like what I did with my uncle and my father. We'd read books and we'd argue about the books. You get something from that. And having to state your point against an intelligent, reasonable person who wants to work towards the truth. If you want to work towards the truth, something good can come out of the conversation. If somebody's just trying to be a jerk, then nothing good comes from it, Okay, once you learn these skills, and I notice too, because I talk on the phone a lot with doctors, okay, and an intelligent doctor, they speak, they listen, they think, they speak, okay? It's an intelligent conversation, whereas a lot of times if I talk to people who are stupid, they constantly are impulsive. You can't really have a conversation. And a lot of times they think they already know everything. And that's a sign of a stupid person. A person who's got their act together, they'll let you speak even if they think you don't know anything. They'll give you a chance to speak. Maybe you surprise them, but there's a maturity to how they converse. Okay, it doesn't matter how much or how fast you teach. The true measure is how much the students have learned. What students lack in schooling is an intellectual relationship or conversation with the teacher. I think education is both using and improving knowledge, and that changes the whole picture. Caring for but never trying to own is a way to define a friendship. Effective therapy begins with acceptance of the therapist into the client's quality world. In a quality school, there must be a warm, supportive classroom environment. Okay, well, I think that's a little bit like having a good wrestling coach. You know he's really trying to help you get better. Okay, the information we are asked to memorize must be useful now or in the foreseeable future, or we won't make an effort to learn no matter how much we're forced to. Okay. Let's see. The best way to teach a skill-based curriculum is to relate it to what you are trying to achieve in the real world. Okay, I think that's all good stuff. So that's William Glasser, the teacher, and he's a good guy. He tried to do it. And what he's basically sort of saying is, make whatever you're studying useful to the student. If it's useful to them, they'll remember it. They'll be more eager to learn it, and it'll stay with them. So yeah, hope that was helpful.